Anyway,
And
Alwyn.
Good evening.
Oh, greeting.
I should be the one who's honored because Mr. Murray, we have not met personally, but I always followed his pronouncements on culture and his contributions on education and national issues, and I find them very intellectual and enlightening. And you, certainly, Pastor, I have a deep respect for those persons who pronounce the word of God, and I am I am the one who is deeply honored to be here tonight to share with you.
Well, I
the extract. I'd love to hear, and I'm sure the loyal opposition would love to hear your comments with regards to the whole matter.
Let me go first. In the past, when there have been any issues, Carol Rogers has raised red flags. Remember, not too long ago when the young lady spoke her according to her conscience, and he said he hoped that this young lady is not victimized. And a few weeks later, she was expelled or she was relieved of her duties of this from the Senate. So Carol Rogers has a way of alerting us to some issues that are going to affect Barbados sometime in the future. And he
Mhm.
probably has an insight into what is happening. He cautioned the us more or less for against the use or the availability of marijuana to especially to the youth who will be saddled with repaying the debt. That is more or less what is covered in the article. And
Yes,
as a
yes.
teacher, I when that becomes so accessible with in our current climate, community climate, how do we guard our young men who sometimes are easily influenced by those fellows sitting on the block and those persons who may use the drug? How do we guard our young people going to school? What do parents look for? How do they work with the guidance counselors in schools when certain behaviors present themselves? That is what we have to, both male and female, and how we have to guard against those negative effects because this drug, marijuana, is becoming so easily accessible that we cannot hold our youth, prevent our youth from having easy access to it. How do we do that?
Uh,
Yes, quickly. We start to think about legalizing or putting things in place that we see on the wider world, but we somehow don't put systems in place for control. Like for instance, in Canada, there are marijuana shops, and these were set up which gives Canadian adults a safer and a regulated alternative outside the illicit market. We have not set those kind of things in place. Um, what will happen sooner than later is that we may see persons turn up at the hospital with marijuana intoxication. How do we treat that? And then we
I,
can see a dependency on cannabis.
and along with things like drugs, along with things like parental involvement and facing realities and so on, is it possible that their technological addiction is affecting their performances in their classrooms and that type of thing?
I can say that what I have noticed that it's affected their writing skills, the skill of writing and writing properly and forming letters. That has since COVID. There has been a struggle with the high usage of technology. Children no longer write. Then, in terms of phrasing, they tend to use or not. They don't use. They are confusing the use of proper English with abbreviations, and you see it in compositions. So that is what technology has done to this generation. And instead of using the technology as support mechanism, it is now a dependency.
And so it's something that's not, to my mind, unusual
how
in that
often are we
aspect.
doing it now, though? And I guess
Yeah,
Alvin,
well,
you could
Alwyn,
help us.
Alwyn would
I want
probably be
to,
able to
yeah,
shed
I
light
want.
on that.
Let me share that because they leaving no student behind and they repeating so that they get a grasp of. Let's for instance, they were in second form, and you want them to, and they have not and they failed second form miserably. So you want to repeat them. But what I have seen is that they are kept back in some instances, but they feel even worse. So I am saying systems have to be in place where those students who are kept back because they have failed that second year segment, is that they have to be specially tutored, and we're not doing that because of the pressure, especially in secondary schools. You pull in students from primary school with low English and math marks, and the secondary school teachers, that's the newer secondary school teachers, are still competing with Harrison College and the Queen's College to get them ready at the same time for CXC exams.
CXC exams, yeah.
And I'm saying that if anybody has to stay in school longer, is those children who start at a lower end of this 11 plus exam.
You know, just very quickly, because I want to move to the next thing.
I
What
think
about the source of things?
I think that within any educational reform or transformation program that we may adopt, we need to look at not the high flyers. The high flyers will always always come to the top. Any education reform or transformation program or will have to take into consideration those persons who are at the bottom, who are taking a little longer to get through. I don't think that today in our school system, because of the pace at which we are asked to produce students for CSC passes, that we have enough time or personnel within the school. Because a teacher within an English class who has a class of 20, 25 students to teach finds it difficult to slow down a bit to accommodate another 5. That is his problem. So we may have to look at additional teachers within our school system who caters to the needs of those who we call slow learners, or people who are taking a little longer than the average child to get ahead.
Right, and my guy,
How it does business.
How it does business, you know, as if it's trying to bully the whole aspect. Gentlemen, your comments.
I would say that this is a shameful turn of events, because when Barbadians were focusing on how unfair it was to ask the church to pay 28,000 when in truth and in fact you were giving away millions to a foreign entity. Here we are now looking at an article which says that in May 9th, a letter that the trustees contend that the Anglican Church was established in 1966, that they were informed by the Anglican Church about this same land, and here you go, still went to Parliament trying to sell that land, which was in dispute, to another entity. I mean that when I read this, that's a painful thing to do to persons who work all their lives and invest in bonds, believing that when it came time for them to reap the benefits that they would, and to have that taken away, that would have been so unfair. At the same time, you will remember that they forgave many
I know where you're going. I know where you're going.
My concern and my closing remarks will be this borrowed money. We hear the government borrowed money to prop up foreign reserves. We have expressed our concerns with the national insurance. Has anyone given any thought that some of the millions borrowed can be used to prop up our national insurance? And that is my closing remark.